Hello everybody. I've been getting a lot of requests lately to do some more of these theory videos, and I think that's awesome. I really enjoy doing these, so I would get back to it. And I figured today we would start by looking at keys, just kind of a basic introduction to what keys are. It's a very, very foundational concept in music, so I figured a good time to get started on it. You've probably heard of people, or you've heard people refer to songs as being in the key of something. Like this song is in the key of D major, or this song is in the key of G minor or something. And that can seem kind of strange at first. Like, how can a song be in the key of something? What exactly does that mean? And that's kind of what I want to show you today. So to start grasping that, I want you to look at the piano notes to start with. Okay. If you begin on the note C, and you go up one single note at a time, like C, C sharp, D, D sharp, all the way up until you get back to C, where the notes just kind of start repeating, you will have covered exactly 12 notes. There's 12 of these in there. And if you were to try to write a song using all 12 of those, things will not go very well. They are packed very densely, and you don't tend to get good harmonies or good music out of it. It starts to just kind of sound like nonsense. So what virtually every song you've ever heard does is they just take a set of those notes and just work with those. Typically 7, that's the typical group. And those 7, if you choose them right, you kind of follow the rules of how keys work, you will get very nice harmonies. Things work very well. They sort of fit and work together. So that's really the whole idea of a key, is just taking that group and working with those. That's all a key really is. Now, keys kind of fall into two different categories. I'm going to show you both of them. But we're going to start with what are called major keys. There are major keys and there are minor keys. And they both kind of have different sounds to them. So the major key, which is what we'll start with, has this sort of brighter, kind of happier sound to it. Typically, the minor key has this sort of sadder, moodier sound. So we'll start with the major one. Now, whenever you're trying to figure out, how to create a key or what all the notes are in a key, you always have a place to start. So we'll start by doing the key of D major. And calling it D major means that D, the note D, is our starting point. It's actually referred to as the root note, which is very important. It seems simple, but that note is like the central part of this whole key. Everything else just kind of fits around this note. It's a very important one. It's called the root. And from this root note, we'll kind of figure out what everything else is, like based on how far away and how it fits with this one we start with. So we're looking for 7 notes. That's how many notes are in a key. And I'm just going to show you the first 3 to start with. They're very easy to find. In a major key, you have your root note to start with. Your second note, note number 2, should be exactly a whole step away from your root note. Now, if you're not clear on what whole steps and half steps are, I actually covered this in a video on chords, and I went real slow and kind of broke all that down. So I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to watch that first. And if you don't know about chords, it'd be a good thing to know anyway, so it might be a good idea. But as long as you're cool with that, I'll show you the rest of this. So you have your root note, you have your second note, which should be exactly a whole step away, and then you have note number 3, which is another whole step away. So a simple way to remember it, just the first 3 notes in a major key are just whole steps apart. And it's really easy to see. If you get kind of used to how the whole steps and half steps work, you can see those 3 pretty much right away. And that works for any major key. Every major key follows the same rules. So if we're doing the key of G major, that's your first 3. If you're doing the key of E major, that's your first 3. B major, D major, just do that one, F major, everywhere. Same thing. And that's the first 3. Those are the first 3 notes that follow this major key pattern. Now, there's only 4 notes left, and those 4 notes are also just whole steps apart, so they're pretty easy to find too. But they start right next to the note you just left on. Let me say it again in a better way. Note number 4 is right next to note number 3. So they should just be a half step apart. So you have your first group of 3, and then 4 notes right next to that, starting right here. And these are all just whole steps apart too, just like that. and that's all 7 notes in a key. In this case, it's D major. So there's your first 3 whole steps apart. Right next to that, you have your next 4, also all whole steps apart. I'll show you a couple different keys just to kind of get comfortable with that. If you do the key of F sharp major, starting right here, there's your first 3 notes, half step apart, right here is your 4th note, and then everything else whole steps up from there. So 3 notes, whole steps apart, 4 notes, whole steps apart. Show you a couple more. Here's a B major, there's your first 3, there's your next 4, and then say F major, there's your first 3, and there's your next 4. And that's a major key, simple as that. One quick point on this, if you're not clear, I'm showing you like the 7 notes in a key. Like let me show you G major again. There's your 7. But these 7 notes also happen up here. If you started on this G, you would get the same thing. So these notes are in the key of G major. So are these. So are the ones down here. Kind of all the way up and down. Okay, so it's not actually limited to just 7. They go all the way up, all the way down, but they're 7 unique notes, like B. You're gonna have B is in this key. This B is also in the key, so is that one. But B flat is not in the key. That is not one of the 7 notes you're gonna be using. Hopefully that makes sense. But anyway, that's a major key, pretty simple. And then I'll show you a minor key, also very simple, kind of follows the same principle. But there's a kind of a different pattern to when you're doing a minor key. We'll start on C, do C minor. Now to do a minor key, same thing, you have your root note. You want to kind of apply this pattern to figure out all the rest of them. In a minor key, note number 2 is also just a whole step up. But note number 3 is where it starts to be different. So your first group in a minor key is just these 2. And then your next group is going to be 3 notes that are all a whole step apart, but that's right next to note number 2. So here's these 2, here's the next 3, right up next to it. And that's your first 5. And then the last 2 notes in a minor key are just like this. They're a whole step apart, but they're pushed right up next to note number 5. Let me go over that real quick. First 2, the minor key, then this group of 3, then this group of 2. And that should cover all 7. Show you a couple different ones real quick. Here's G minor. There's your first 2. There's your next 3. There's your last 2. F sharp minor. There's those 2. There's those 3. There's those 2. Okay, and that's the pattern for a minor key. Like I said, the major keys, minor keys, same concept, but they have very different sounds to them, or different kind of feelings attached to them. Minor's kind of moodier, sadder. Major sort of brighter and happier. At least that's the typical take on it. Real quick, when you're doing a key, it's important to think about how the notes are supposed to work. When you choose these notes, let's go back to D major again real quick. These 7 notes here in this key, they're not intended to sound together at the same time. I keep playing this just to show you, but this doesn't exactly sound good. It doesn't sound like music. That's because the notes in a key are designed to be used kind of parts at a time. You might take a few of them and put them together. And when you do, you get a chord, that's what that's called. And you might take a few others and put those together. You get a different chord. You might take them and sort of apply a pattern. You might kind of do something like that, move to there. You kind of move in and out of the different notes in the key. You might put things on top, like a melody. And I don't know, whatever. But you're not trying to play them together. You're trying to use them to sort of create all these different things. And that's the whole idea of what a key is. And then, of course, same thing for the minor. You're going to kind of move in and out of the notes inside that key. And then one more thing about this before I leave it alone. It seems like a really small thing, but it's very important when you're dealing with keys. You want to start to understand really just which note is which in this key. Like this is note number 1, this is note number 3, this is note number 6. And you want to start identifying notes that way. You want to recognize that when I'm in C major, this is note number 5, this is note number 7. If I'm in G major, this is note number 5, this is note number 7, there's 6, there's 3. You want to start getting used to that, because in every different key, the notes kind of work the same way. Note number 5 always has the same sort of effect. Note number 7 always has the same effect. So you want to start to identify them by their position in the key. And I think I'm going to leave it at that for today. I just wanted to kind of cover the basics of how to figure out what are in keys. What I haven't really talked about at all is how to actually do things with them, how to take the notes in a key and put them together and make chords or melodies or whatever else. I'm going to leave that for a little bit later. So there you go. Hopefully that makes sense. Leave me comments and questions if you have anything that wasn't clear. I can either clarify that or maybe do a follow-up video, or you can even let me know what you'd like to see next. I really appreciate the feedback, and yeah, thanks a lot. I will see you very soon.